Welcome back on Monday morning. Neil Freeman here on Bob FM, and it is Monday, and that means it's time for Meshbesher Monday. And I've got Tony Nemo with us to continue our conversation about Stryker hip recalls. This has been a topic, Tony, that you're kind of the expert on. We appreciate the information you've given us. Now let's talk about the fact that there was a settlement, and I want to know for our listeners, or our listeners would like to know, is it a one-size-fits-all settlement, and when did that happen?
Sure, Neil. There was a settlement of the Stryker litigation. It occurred on November 3rd of 2014. It is not a one-size-fits-all settlement by any means. The settlement really consists of two parts. One is a base award, and that is a sum of money to compensate people for having to go through a revision surgery where they extract the stem. And let me just tell you what that's about. Normally, when there's a hip revision surgery where you have a hip replacement and you have to go back later and get it fixed, they simply go into the hip. They typically may take out the cup, the shell that's in the hip socket. They may replace the head, but then they sew you back up and you do pretty well.
Okay.
When you have a Stryker rejuvenate or ABG2 hip removed, however, it's a much bigger deal because the part that's bad is the stem. And so they have to go in and extract the stem that they previously pounded in and grew into the bone. And that stem doesn't want to come out. And so either the doctor has to do a variety of things over the course of several hours to try to tease this stem out, or they literally take a saw, cut apart the femur, open it up like a clamshell, and take out the stem. Then they got to put the pieces back together, bind it up with wires, and then put in a new stem. It's a big deal. But for people who recover from that huge surgery pretty well, there is a base award. And your listeners can certainly give me a call. I'd be happy to take a look at their circumstances and tell them what that base award would be.
All right, Tony, let's say that they didn't fall into that part of the equation. Where do they fit on the other side, or how does that play out?
Well, if a patient doesn't qualify for the settlement, or we don't think it is in their best interest to do the settlement, it's a situation we have to sit down with the patient and talk about what's best for them and what their options would be.
Because there's different levels, obviously, of from person to person of how critically their redo was.
Absolutely. And there are certain permanent injuries after a revision surgery in the Stryker cases that aren't compensated in the settlement. And it's a little tricky, but it's important that patients know that before they commit themselves to anything like this.
All right, so there is a little bit of a gray area for this. Since there are so many different variables, you need to talk to a professional, an expert, and that's where Tony comes in from Meshbesher and Spence. How do they get in touch with you, Tony?
They can give us a call or visit us at meshbesher.com.
All right, that's our Meshbesher Monday for today on Bob FM.